I would like members to join with me in observing a minute's silence following the recent passing of Councillor Linda Arkley, OBE. Councillor Arkley was a serving councillor for Cullercoats Ward. She was first elected as a councillor in 1991 for Tynemouth. In 2003, she was elected the borough's first female mayor, a position she was elected into again in 2009. She received the OBE in 2018 for services to politics as recognition for her dedication. Could you all please stand now? I'd like to announce that I've made a couple of changes to the order of business tonight. We will take item 5 from the Police and Crime Commissioner first, then revert back to the agenda. The PCC has to leave at 6:30, so I'm proposing that we receive 2 questions from the Labour group and 1 question from each of the other groups. If members have questions that have not been asked, they can write to me as chair and I will forward them on to the PCC. Okay. Thank you. Kim?
Don't want to accidentally vote, do I? Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. It is fantastic to be with you here this evening. I'm going to say a couple of things up front before answering questions. And of course, it is my pleasure to introduce Vanessa Jardine. Some of you will already have met. It is her first meeting with us, although she's been the Chief Constable in Northumbria Police now since April. And I'm really delighted that she's here also to answer your questions. First of all, North Tyneside Council and the councillors around the table, around the room of all colours, have been important partners in the work that my office and the police do. And there are many great examples of how we've worked together for residents, such as Safer Streets, on the Violence Reduction Unit, on our joint efforts to tackle crime and antisocial behaviour across the borough. Now, I think it's important to say here that for all policing issues, for all of the issues we face here in policing, this remains a very safe region, and we have a police force who are committed to keeping it that way. But as councillors will identify, there are always challenges. And my big worry right now is that the key to meeting those challenges, as well as all of the preventative work that we do together in partnership, is more police officers. But the Home Office is limiting our capacity to respond by creating a north-south divide in police recruitment. Since 2010, Northumbria Police has lost more than 1,100 police officers and some £148 million from government budget cuts. I think with yesterday's autumn statement, we can't see that getting any better. I don't know if anybody noticed, but as alongside not saying anything about the North East in an hour on his feet, the Chancellor also said absolutely nothing about public services, including councils and police forces. A few years back, nobody will have missed the fact that the government said it would fund police forces to hire 20,000 new police officers nationwide. Northumbria's share of that has been 675. We're still owed more than 400 police officers who could be on patrol now in North Tyneside. And yet, while we fight for more cops, other forces are celebrating reaching historic headcount increases. It was reported recently that there are now more Essex police officers than at any other time in the force's 182-year history. Elsewhere in the south, Cambridgeshire also celebrated having more officers than ever before. Overall figures show that the North East has been the hardest hit region, with 15% fewer officers than in 2010, compared to the national difference of 7%. In the South East, the average reduction is now just 0.8% fewer, a staggering difference, alarming evidence of the North-South divide and police numbers created by 8 Home Secretaries, I think. My message to the Home Secretary, the new Home Secretary, is clear. Give us back our cops. And I really hope that North Tyneside Council can back that message and lend its support. We can't let this cut in police officer numbers be permanently embedded in their region. Now, while we wait for change, there's much going on to keep us safe. The force has recently launched a new era of neighbourhood policing. It's something that myself and the Chief have discussed, and I'm so delighted that she has such a good plan. We've agreed 134 new police officers in neighbourhoods, and you'll start seeing those in place shortly. In fact, I think many of them are already in place, with plans to have that complete by January. Alongside that, there are new violence reduction policing units going into neighbourhoods as well to tackle serious violence. These officers will all help to reduce crime and antisocial behaviour, to proactively target and disrupt offenders and prevent vulnerable victims, and they will be supported by 98 PCSOs. While that new neighbourhood policing model beds in, the office is working with Northumbria to back Northumbria Police on the issues that matter to the public. Now, I know transport safety around metro stations has been an issue, which is why we've funded repeated projects to target antisocial behaviour on public transport. In the 4th round of the Safer Streets programme, we funded police overtime to deliver targeted days of action in North Tyneside, and I'm delighted to say that North Tyneside Council also funded extra wardens. In the 5th round of this scheme, there was £46,000 for transport and street teams to target offenders. Overall, £1 million has gone into the transport network from my office, designed to keep our bus and metro network safe, and the results have been great. Over the summer, antisocial behaviour around metro stations was down 50% in North Tyneside. Imagine how much more we could do if we had those extra cops back. Motorcycle ASB has also been an issue of concern in some areas, and it's something I've discussed frequently on behalf of the public with the Chief Constable, and I've spoken about publicly. As well as the ongoing policing response, the officers supported the force with funds for motorbike ASB intelligence gathering that will feed into police activity with targeted operations from the force. That includes the introduction of drones across the area. The Chief will go over the operational specifics of policing, but I just want to stress again that behind those successes is the key partnership from North Tyneside Council, for which we're very grateful. We're making great progress together with the resources available. I'm going to end this where I started, by saying this is a safe borough in a safe region. There are crimes that stand out, and there are issues that need to be addressed, but this remains a place that we're incredibly proud of and that it's a pleasure to represent. Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening, everybody, and thank you for the invite to come to your meeting. It really is a delight as your Chief Constable to be here and to be able to address you. I'm only going to say a few words because I know there are a number of questions, and I think it's really important that I hear the issues that matter to you and to the residents of North Tyneside, so I am only going to say a few words. As you would imagine, I've spent my first few months getting out about across the force, speaking not only to our members of staff that obviously work across this great region, but also getting to know partners and really key collaborations that Northumbria Police is a part of. I've set out a number of priorities for the organisation, and ones that we are working very hard to. And if I can share those with you now. So the first one is be there when you need us. So that includes answering the telephone call, and I'm really pleased to say that performance before I came significantly improved and continues to show those improvements. We do need to show some improvements in our response times, and that is a priority for us. And we also need to improve some of our investigations and the way that we investigate, and keeping our victims and witnesses updated, and that is also a key priority. In order to be able to do some of that work, we've undertaken internally within the force something that many of you will be aware of, a process called priority-based budgeting. And we're using that to drive efficiency and effectiveness out of the force in order to realise some investment opportunities for us. And we've just completed our first round of that. We'll do it every year, but that has realised the opportunity, and I'm really grateful to the work that the force has done, and excited by what that's going to give us opportunity to do next year. We're looking at the way that we work, so we're going to do an operating model review, which again is very internal, but it's the external delivery that we're focused on. And we're going to make some changes around that, and that work has already started and will continue. And we expect to have everything in place at the very latest by next April, including possibly some shift changes for officers to make us more visible, more accessible for the people of North Tyneside and Northumbria as a whole. There are challenges, of course there are challenges, national challenges that do affect us locally, and you'll have seen a lot of the activity that happened down in the Metropolitan Police affects us as well. And we've also seen, because some of the recent incidents, we've had protests not here in North Tyneside on a huge scale, although we have seen some instances, and we're working very hard to reassure the public, reassure the community that we are delivering a good service and keeping them safe on the streets, which is the most important thing. I do have some statistics that I could quote, but I think I'll probably wait until we get some of the questions. But I would just reiterate what the Commissioner has said. In terms of North Tyneside, it is a very safe place to live and work. It's a great place to live and work. I live and work here myself. So I'll save that for some of the questions, but that was all I was going to say at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kim, Vanessa. Questions? Erin?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for coming this evening as well. The 1 Million Women and Girls campaign highlights it too often. Policymakers assume that women and men use public services in the same way, but this is often not the case. What steps have you taken as PCC to address this issue about practical steps to support women and highlight this equality? And also, could you tell us how you plan to highlight the White Ribbon Day on the 25th of November, whose theme this year is #Change the Story, and their aim to end violence against women and girls? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I think, Erin, you and I have talked about this before, and I couldn't agree with you more. We really do need to focus on the way women use services, and a huge amount of the work that we've done is been about protecting and preventing crime and violence against women and girls. I'm going to give you just a couple of examples because it's easier to do that than to list off an entire programme of work, which I'm just so very proud of, actually. Northumbria is known as a leader in this area, and I think that that's a testament to my predecessor, Vera, to the force, and to the commitment that we have running through the office. Safer Streets funding that we've pumped into preventing violence against women and girls is focused on public services. So, for example, transport. It's focused on the nighttime economy and safety in the nighttime economy, and it's focused on public spaces. And through that programme, we've done a range of awareness raising campaigns, such as in the nighttime economy, saying, this is not an acceptable place to commit harassment. The statistics are absolutely massive as to the number of women who have been harassed in the nighttime economy, and it's something that we've got to drive down. We've had Operation Cloak, which puts plainclothes police officers in the nighttime economy to protect them against sexual predators, and that's evolved because the Home Office cut our funding for it, but we will not cut the programmes. And then on public transport, we've seen a massive increase in women who are telling us they feel safe using public transport as a result of the interventions from the multi-agency transport teams that we've deployed, the extra police patrols, the security that we've worked with Nexus to provide, and so on. I think we can continue to expand that programme. We were able to fund measures in parks, specifically to make those public spaces feel safer. And of course, we have our It All Adds Up campaign, which highlights what it feels like to be on the receiving end of misogyny and harassment, because what we know is misogyny and harassment can turn into violence against women and girls. And so we've got to tackle that at its root. But there's loads more that we can and should be doing. I'm meeting the 1 Million Women campaign next week to talk about it in the round, not just as a police and crime commissioner, but in my capacity as a candidate for North East Mayor, because I think we've got to be looking at the million women who live in our region and making this a more equal place for them. In terms of White Ribbon Day, I'll be at the park run. I think probably quite a few of you will be at that park run. You were last year in North Tyneside to talk about the issue of violence against women and girls and to highlight that. And then later in the day on Sunday, I'll be attending a specific White Ribbon church service. But across the force, we are seeing white ribbons everywhere and a concerted action, not just over the 16 days of action or through White Ribbon Day to highlight the issue of violence against women and girls and to tackle it, but every single day. Because, it's fine to mark. We've had a couple of things this week. We've had equal pay. We've had equal pay day. We've had Ask Her to Stand day. We've got White Ribbon Day. All of these are days of awareness designed to improve things for women. But it means nothing if we don't focus on them all of the rest of the time. So thank you for your question. And Vanessa, I don't know whether you want to add anything.
I'll just add two very quick things in relation to that from a force perspective. We have a dedicated specific violence against women and girls strategy with an action plan underneath, as does the PCC, and we support that. But I think the two areas that we are having a very clear focus on at the moment are in relation to domestic abuse and rape and serious sexual offences. So there is a nationwide project called Operation Soteria, which you may have heard of, which is all looking at rape right from report right the way through to outcomes, whatever the right outcome for the victim is. And we're part of that. We were one of the early pilot forces that wanted to be a pathfinder in relation to that, and we are continuing with that work. And as part of the operating model review that I mentioned earlier, we are looking at our response to domestic abuse as well, to make sure that we have got an effective response and that every single victim gets the right service that they require. But we're also looking at prevention, because one of my big things is around preventing it happening in the first place. And there's a number of sort of smaller areas of work where we're trialling a number of different things around that prevention, because my view is that an increase in domestic abuse is not necessarily a bad thing, because I want people to have confidence to report domestic abuse to us. So we have to be careful when we sort of look at domestic abuse levels, because it could be that people feel happier to report. So there's a number of things within the force in addition to the other operations that the Commissioner mentioned.
Thank you. Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. The slow response to the 101 non-urgent phone line is a matter of huge concern to residents. People often tell me that they no longer bother to call the line because they're sick of hanging on and getting absolutely no answer. And yet at the same time, we're told by the local neighbourhood officers to report things all the time, or whenever incidents happen, that they should report them, so that the police have an accurate picture of what is happening and can deploy resources accordingly. What are you doing to increase or improve the response rate, please? Because it's really dreadful at the moment. And this has gone on for a long time. I remember, I think this is probably your first visit here, but several years ago, your predecessor, Avia Abed, acknowledged that the response rate was appalling and promised to do something about it.
Thank you for the question. This has been a huge focus of the force for probably the last 18 months, not since April, since I've come in. The force has committed a significant amount of resources to tackle the issue that you quite rightly point out. I think from a scrutiny perspective, we get reports on our performance in that relation every single week, and in fact every single day for my colleagues, and we report to the Commissioner on a bi-monthly basis in relation to that. So, for example, if I give you the performance figures for over the weekend that's just been, weekends traditionally being our very busy time, as you can imagine, our average answer time for 101 was 8 seconds over the weekend. We have seen significant improvements around our both 999 and 101 calls. 18 months ago, the force was 42nd out of 43 forces for its worst performance. As I stand here today, the force is now in the 21st, so it's halved that, with still other work to do. We constantly look at it, but I would, and I'm really happy to share what our performance currently is, but it is significantly improved. There are times when it takes longer, so when I say 8 seconds, that's an average time, but I would just like to reassure everybody here that the performance has significantly improved and is closely monitored day to day. We do campaigns. We do encourage people to look at alternative methods as well. Some people prefer to use like a chat facility, and there are other different ways. And we are, again, constantly looking. We're looking at our response as when we answer the phone to try and direct people to the right way, because lots of people phone us because they want to speak to an officer or they want to find out some information. We've got a new website that's just launched and we'll continue to have things added to it. And again, by going to the website, you can get a lot of information that people previously probably would have rang 101 to speak to us. So there's lots of technical advancements coming down the line. But just to reassure you, we are very, very conscious of how important this is to the public. And it is one of our priorities to monitor and make sure that we are meeting what we should do and answering the call as quick as we can.
I think just to add to that, actually, I commend the force for the work they've done on it. We did call it in about 18 months ago because it got so bad that we had to do that. And since then, it's been monthly monitoring. And actually, Vanessa says we bring it every couple of months. You tell me about it every week informally, because it is something that needs constant monitoring. We did sustain huge levels of austerity, and obviously that strips away layers of particularly police staff. And so there had to be a move to restore people into call handling, and we put 50 new call handlers into that contact centre, and that's made all the difference, as well as all of the new technologies that have been introduced to help people to contact the police in the way that, frankly, that they want to, because actually the other thing about it is not everybody wants to do it on the phone. So I'm pleased with the progress. We'll continue to monitor it, as well as response times as well, because it is crucial. But yeah, rest assured that the performance continues to improve. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Antisocial behaviour is a massive concern for everyone in this borough. We've seen some great successes in partnership working with both Northumbria Police and Nexus around the borough. 31% fall in Operation Courtwas last year to the lowest levels since Strangford began. Operation Sentinel and many other operations right around the borough. There has been some fantastic partnership work done, but obviously more can and will need to be done. What are you going to do to continue tackling antisocial behaviour? I know you've talked about police officers being cut, and as you know, the big obvious answer is the Conservative government to give us more money for more cops on the street. That would help, certainly. But what are both Northumbria Police and the PCC going to do to help further combat, and how have you had your successes so far?
I might have struggled a little bit there with that. Was it about ASB?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I'm still getting used to some of the nuance. Was it ASB?
Yes.
People say the same to
Carl,
me.
you need to
It was quite quick. Sorry, Carl. I do apologise.
What more are we going to be doing to reduce antisocial behaviour?
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry about that. It was just, you were very, my ear is getting better, much better. So antisocial behaviour is a huge priority for us. I recognise, and we recognise, the impact that it has on residents and people that are affected. I think it's right to call out Coastwatch and Maple, the two operations that have had real successes this year. And my plan is simply to continue building on those successes. When the Commissioner spoke about 134 additional officers going into the neighbourhoods, what that actually means for North Tyneside is 50 dedicated additional neighbourhood officers. So you can see the commitment that we are making to North Tyneside, and that is so that we can continue operations like that and tackle some of those issues.
Yeah, and through the office, from my office's point of view, it's got to be more partnership working, more resource into things like the joint programmes we do around safer streets, continuing to back the force to make those investments, specific programmes to tackle things like motorbike antisocial behaviour, which we know blight our neighbourhoods. We know it's a national problem, but we've got to be doing everything that we can to tackle it. And we've got our antisocial behaviour board running across the region, which I'm really pleased that North Tyneside, both at an officer and a political level, have been really proactive on, and then have you run your own board, which we then participate in as well, to make sure that we've got completely joined up responses. Antisocial behaviour is that thing that too often residents find themselves falling between the cracks in services, whether it's the cracks between the council and the police and the council and housing, the police and the council and housing and transport. And, the design in the system sometimes is just that people get passed around, and we can't accept that. It's not good enough that people get passed around. And so together we've been working to close those gaps so that people get a consistent response and a solution, rather than just kind of an ongoing conversation with the system and nothing to improve. Thank you.
Councillor Bartoli.
Thank you. Can I just start by saying it's hugely disappointing that despite the PCC being invited here almost 2 years ago, this is the first time that she's attended this chamber. And when she does turn up, she only gives us half an hour of her time. She limits the number of questions, despite, I'm sure, a number of us wanting to have some answers today. And then, unlike her predecessor, instead of talking about crime and antisocial behaviour, seemed to make a mayoral campaign pitch. But we are where we are, and unfortunately, the Police and Crime Commissioner has refused to engage with our Conservative councillors throughout her time and has avoided all of our offers to meet, and yet seems to turn up for every photo opportunity that the Labour Party has to offer. So, for the limited one question that we are allowed to ask her today, I was just wondering, our beaches in North Tyneside, and particularly those in my ward of Tynemouth, have become a little bit like the Wild West, with large groups of gangs of kids with weapons on our sunny evenings, and particularly towards the end of the school terms. And whilst I appreciate this is an extremely challenging policing task, can I ask her if she's A, taking this seriously, and B, what she hopes to be able to do about it?
Councillor Bartoli, I can only imagine that you prepared your remarks ahead of what I said, because I think what you got from me was absolutely an input into the state of the policing across our region, including the state of police officer numbers. I was invited 2 years ago. We have had a global pandemic, which has limited our ability to do things, but I'm grateful for the invite and I'm happy to spend time at council. And as for the rules in your chamber, I certainly don't make those. But Conservative councillors, as I told Councillor Bones when we had a conversation at Labour Party conference, I'm more than happy to attend with with Conservative councillors for a walkabout. I know that the Cabinet member will be more than happy to join me to do that, along with the neighbourhood police. So please do get in touch and we can arrange that. As for the beaches, I think our beaches in our region are absolutely beautiful. They're a great place to go. I think it's a shame that you want to do them down. I'm going to allow the Chief to talk about the operational response to antisocial behaviour, which I know is a very real problem. You've obviously already heard a little bit about Operation Coast Watch, but it's something that we will continue to prioritise. Of course, we take it seriously. This is a brilliant place. We want everyone to feel safe when they're moving around. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for the question. I've mentioned a little bit about Coast Watch. To reassure you, it's my absolute intention to carry that on, as with the activity that we carry out at the same time on the metro network as well, because we recognise that people, particularly young people, come to the area using the metro, and very often they're the people that are causing the ASB. I think we've seen that the antisocial behaviour as a result of Coast Watch has decreased by 31%, which is a significant decrease. But we will still continue because the beaches in Tynemouth and in North Tyneside are beautiful, and people should be able to enjoy them in a safe environment and not be harassed by young people drinking and causing antisocial behaviour. We've seen significant reductions this year. It's my absolute commitment to carry on that and just improve next year, and we will carry on. Every time we do Coast Watch, we have at least 8 dedicated officers and a real partnership approach, including support from the council around that approach, and we will carry on doing that.
Can I actually also just take the opportunity to commend some of the community and voluntary sector organisations that have supported us in reducing crime and antisocial behaviour. The youth services organisations like the Colour Codes Collective, who do brilliant work. They raise awareness, they bring issues to the police, they bring issues to me, and also they deliver some of the brilliant programmes that help us to divert young people away from crime and antisocial behaviour, not just at the coast, but right across the borough and across the region. So it would be remiss of me to come to council and not thank them, as well as thank North Tyneside Council for the joint working. And I'm more than happy to work with you or any other councillor in this chamber to keep that work going. Thank you.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, shoplifting in town centres has really risen. It's a crime that affects the small businesses, and it also affects the staff, because very often, sometimes they're threatened when people are coming at the shop. And I've spoke to businesses in North Shields, for example, and I actually witnessed a group of young men taking a big box of lager and just walking out the shop, and the staff are frightened to tackle them. But they're also equally disappointed with the response from the police, because they say that if it's less than £200 or whatever, that they don't actually come out, and that they say that the police say it's a petty theft, when actually it can be it can be really sort of traumatic for for the shops themselves. So it's and the staff. I mean, there was actually 2 people have been attacked in North Shields, security staff, with shoplifters. So I'm just wondering what the police are actually doing, what measures are doing to work with the businesses to help prevent shoplifting, because, like I say, it's having a real massive impact on some of the town centres.
Thank you for the question, and I absolutely agree. Our response to shoplifting was nowhere near where it needed to be, or it should be, and you give some very real examples there of where we needed to improve our service. We've changed the way that we are dealing with shoplifting. We changed probably about 4 to 6 weeks ago now, where we'll be responding in a much better way to reports of shoplifting, to reports of violence in shops, violence towards staff, and assaults towards staff. I can provide some figures for you around what that response is providing, but you're right to point out that it wasn't acceptable. We've identified that, and we've changed the way that we operate in relation to shoplifting.
Yeah, I think, Councillor Davis, you make a really good point. It is something that's of real concern, and actually, I've had a number of conversations myself where the topic is shoplifting, but what we're actually talking is just out and out violence. It's not shoplifting, it's crime and it's violence, and it's got to be stopped. So I welcome the work that the force are undertaking to change the way that they're responding to shoplifting. I'm meeting with the force and a group of retailers next week to talk more about how we can have a joined up and strategic response to that. A lot of our retailers, some of the bigger ones in particular, have been really, really forthcoming with really good ideas, with information, with intelligence, and it's going to be a case of working together to crack this issue and to make sure that those who are committing violence against shop workers are brought to justice, because it really is really scary. And I fully support the work that the force are doing on that. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Vanessa. If anyone has any questions that they want to relay on to Kim and Vanessa, just send them to me and I'll make sure that they both get them. Thank you once again. Thank you. Okay. Members will be aware that if there's a request for any recorded vote, on an electronic voting system has been introduced. Can members please make sure that they are seated in the allocated seats in order to make sure that the system is able to operate correctly? So you've got 2 minutes to move about if you're on your seat. Okay, item 2 on the agenda, apologies. I've received apologies from Councillor Rebecca O'Keefe, Louise Marshall, Tricia Neary and Dame Norma Redfern. Are there any more apologies? No. Councillor Davis.
Councillor Michelle Fox.
She's moved them across, I think. There we go. She has a plastic on. We're now going on to public questions. There's been 3 valid questions have been received from members of the public to be asked at this meeting. 30 minutes is allowed for the questions from members of the public. Each questioner in attendance will have the opportunity to ask a supplementary question and will have up to 1 minute. The person responding has 5 minutes to reply to the initial question and 2 minutes to reply to the supplementary question. Any supplementary question must arise directly from the substantive question. Okay, thank you. Right, first question is Mr. Christie. Is Mr. Christie in attendance? Would you like to take this as read, or do you like to speak?
I'd like to read the question out, please. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the Chair of Council for giving me the opportunity to bring this question forward to this meeting, which so happens to coincide with Road Safety Week. In the UK, an average of 5 people are killed and 76 people are seriously injured on our roads every day. Every act of road violence has a detrimental effect on the individuals and their families. With that in mind, on the 21st of September, during the meeting of Council, Motion 5 was moved with regards to road safety. However, the initiatives provided by this current leadership amounts to nothing more than kicking the can down the road and putting the onus on Northumberland Police to enforce road safety. To quote paragraph 3 on the amended motion, Council also notes other than road and road infrastructure design, North Tyneside Council has little power to enforce on road safety. Central Government allows councils to apply for powers to enforce moving traffic offences, which the current leadership have been approached for by individuals, schools and road safety organisations since it became available in May 2022. This includes the ability to enforce school streets. To date, the current leadership have actively refused to apply for these powers. Whilst it could be argued that the wording in the motion is accurate, it does hide the matter that the Council has powers available to use but have yet or refused to apply for them. This could be seen by a neutral observer as being disingenuous. Paragraph 3 also mentions road infrastructure design. There's a lot the leadership can do in that space. Redesign the roads so the speeds in that area cannot exceed that for the limit. Changing signs for 30-mile-an-hour zones to 20 without updating the road design isn't going to change behaviours. As a result, I'm calling on the Mayor to allow the committee to hear evidence from the citizens of this borough, the road safety groups and organisations that have been raising this with councillors and the Mayor directly to aid in the decision-making process. Will the Mayor hear this call and update Motion 5 from the 21st of September to include the hearing of evidence to the committee?
Councillor Hannah Johnson, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr Christie, for your question. So following the road safety motion and subsequent review at the Green Subcommittee, it was agreed that the Council will undertake discussions with emergency service stakeholders, the purpose of which were to review working practices and processes, to establish opportunities to share information, promote community speed watch and review all moving traffic offences. As part of these discussions, we will also undertake a public consultation exercise to give residents the opportunity to provide comments as to how best to deal with road safety and speeding prevention. The public consultation exercise will commence in January 2024 for 4 weeks and be made available through the Council's website. The results of the consultation will be published and included in the new plan for addressing the motion. And a final report will be presented at the Council meeting in March 2024 for approval. We will also include evidence from the public in addressing the motion following the consultation exercise, which is planned to start in January 24 as well. This plan will be concluded as an addition to the travel safety strategy that is currently being updated and refreshed. At this stage, members of the public will be given the opportunity to submit comments for inclusion in the document relating to improving road safety and preventing speeding as well.
Mr Christie, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, thank you, Councillor. In relation to the planning processes as well, that entrenches a modern attitude with wide sweeping corners, junctions, massive multi-lane roundabouts and pedestrian barriers, not to protect pedestrians but to allow progression of motors without the threat of inconvenience. You have an opportunity to design the life out of antisocial motoring behaviours. Noting that the motion to include speed watch was mentioned, this is just another loose attempt to show progress without actually doing anything on behaviours. Hunter S. Thompson, a US journalist, had said, "We can't expect people to have respect for law and order until we teach respect to those we have entrusted to enforce these laws. So when will the leadership show actual political will, invest in measures and enforce civil motoring offences within the borough?"
Councillor Johnson,
Thanks,
would you
Mr.
like
Christie.
to...
Like I said, we will be undertaking and speaking the consultation and speaking to the emergency services, which obviously include Northumbria Police, and we'll also be consulting with other groups as well, maybe things like driving schools and the British Horse Society, things like that as well, to ensure our roads are as safe as possible. I know that you as well are specifically involved in Denby School and school streets. I'm actually going to be meeting with the head, along with officers, the head of Denby School over the next week or so. So we're going to be discussing that with her specifically as well.
Thank you, Councillor.
Is Mr Jones in attendance? Do you want to ask the question, Mr Jones?
I will do, yes, please. Right, in 2021, it was estimated 11.6% of people in North Tyneside often or always feel lonely. This figure puts North Tyneside in the worst 10% of local authority areas and clearly represents a serious problem. What action has the Council taken since then to address the issue, and how is it monitoring progress made?
Councillor Carl Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I'll speak more clearly here. I fully agree that loneliness is a collector's challenge that requires action. While the Office of National Statistics surely highlighted that North Tyneside was in the worst 10% of local authority areas, the survey was carried out during the national lockdown at a time when North Tyneside had additional local restrictions in place. More recently, the Council's residents survey found that 8% of residents reported feeling lonely or isolated most or all of the time, which is in line with the national average. We need to note that loneliness is not just an individual issue, it's a community concern that impacts us all. Loneliness can erode the sense of connection and belonging that is vital for a thriving community. While a loneliness stereotype is often of older people, we know the main challenge of loneliness that it can affect anyone at any stage of life. As a council, we provide many direct services which help combat loneliness, promote social connections and build relationships. It is clear that health, education, transport, housing, planning, employment, culture and leisure can all make a dramatic difference to reducing loneliness. Our resident survey and national research highlights that there are some circumstances or personal characteristics that can place people at greater or lesser risk of loneliness, including life challenges such as redundancy, retirement, parenthood, bereavement, and care and responsibilities. Many of the council services available to support our residents can alleviate loneliness at different stages of life, including our family hubs to support new parents, adult skills and employment service to provide opportunities to learn new skills, gain confidence and gain employment. Care and Connect provides relationship opportunities to access activities and groups to support well-being and reduce isolation. And our warm welcome spaces give residents access to free hot drinks, Wi-Fi and opportunities to do activities such as bingo, crafts and cookery lessons. Our newly approved Connecting Community strategy will turn 4 existing customer first centres and 2 community centres into community hubs, having inclusive spaces that become a focal point for community activity. Working with partners, we'll be able to join up in the wide range of activities that are provided in our communities. Thank you.
Councillor Jones, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, yes. The ongoing review of polling stations has flagged up areas where polling places have had to be placed outside of polling districts because there's not a single communal building within the area. Meanwhile, there's a number of large housing developments being permitted, sorry I brought your table, which include no communal amenities, setting up the long-term future for more of the same. Does the Council recognise that this is part of the problem, and will it commit to finding ways to make sure that future developments build communities rather than just maximising the number of houses?
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I absolutely do recognise that some developments don't have community facilities and shops on, and we've always will work with both the master plans and all of our large developments to ensure that is the case. The reality is, though, we would need a change in primary legislation in order to enforce that. We would need to change the national planning policy framework in order to ensure that any development built had to have community facilities on. I absolutely think they should. It's something we will continue to campaign on. I hope Mr Jones will join us in trying to make sure we get a change of primary legislation to try and combat loneliness, because there is a real issue. And we don't just want large housing estates built or just housing estates. That causes huge issues. We need places that are for communities and where communities can thrive. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Is Councillor Steele, do you wish to ask the question? Councillor. Mr Steele. Mr Steele.
Don't be too preemptive about that. My question relates to the Climate Emergency UK climate scorecards, in which the local council scored quite a distance below average. But in particular, I wanted to ask a question about the planning and land and planning section, where the council scored 8% against the national average of 35. This section includes a fabric-first approach to housing and homes to be operationally net zero. What plans and timescales does the council have to improve on this score, update the local plan, given the efficient use of energy in buildings is one of the most affordable ways to lessen the detrimental effects of climate change and our social, financial and personal well-being?
Councillor Graham, would you like to answer?
I would. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your question, Mr Steele. We do not agree with the climate scorecards for councils published by Climate Emergency UK. The evidence we provided in response to them in their initial scoring via their volunteer research does not appear to have been taken into account. We are therefore currently in the process of challenging the findings in the scorecard with significant supporting evidence. Climate Emergency UK, for example, think that our climate emergency target is 2050, for some reason when it is in fact 2030, as you and people in our borough know very well. Indeed, I'm very proud of the Council's Carbon Net Zero 2030 Action Plan and the positive results this is producing. Only last week, the Council was notified of our recent assessment by the Carbon Disclosure Project. This is a well-established global assessment of climate action by cities and regions. It resulted in the Council being awarded the highest possible grade, which is a grade A. Of the 939 applicants in 2023, only 119 were awarded the A grade, and this places North Tyneside on the A list alongside cities such as New York, Tokyo, London, Barcelona, Paris and Sydney. Additionally, this year the Council won first prize in the category of Best Local Authority at the North East Energy Efficiency Awards and went on to finish in second place at the National Awards. In terms of the North Tyneside Local Plan, this was adopted in 2017 following independent examination by an inspector acting on behalf of the Secretary of State, who concluded that it provided policies and proposals capable of securing sustainable development in the borough. There is certainly work to do nationally to ensure that climate and carbon considerations are a clear part of development frameworks. This is currently not the case. And a reworking of the national policy framework is promised by government. When that changes, and it's been promised, our policies will change accordingly. In the meantime, we continue to use all of the tools we have at our disposal to tackle this pressing issue that means so much to the Mayor, Cabinet Council and the communities that we service. And thank you once again for your question.
Mr Steele, do you have a supplementary question you would like to ask?
Yes, I do. Thanks. There's a number of points of contention there, but I'll keep it to one, given that I've got a minute. A lot of councils that scored well, in inverted commas, in the climate scorecard have welcomed the report and saying it's good to be recognised and it's given them food for thought. I found Sandra's response kind of defensive, to be honest. And I just wonder if the council would consider collaborating with other councils who have got different scores, I won't say better, but different scores in key areas. Partnership working seems to be what the Climate Emergency UK project is all about, to get people to talk together to improve the way they're tackling the climate issue. So collaboration is my question rather than defensiveness.
Councillor Graham.
Thank you. Responding to Climate Emergencies UK Council's Climate Action Scorecards, Councillor Darren Wadwolf, the Environment Spokesman for the LGA, said that as leaders of their communities, local government has a fundamental role to play in tackling climate change. It's very complex, bringing very unique and interconnected challenges and opportunities to every place. And we don't support league tables as they often paint a two-dimensional picture of the context the councils are working within, and unfairly compare councils with different challenges. There are many authorities in this region who are challenging. They've lost points like we have because the local plan doesn't include the net zero target, and the target was introduced after the plan was produced. We've lost points for not reporting on our own emissions and not reducing our own emissions. Both are false, we do. We've lost points for not raising income for climate action from any other sources, despite a wealth of evidence to the contrary we gave them around a whole range of successful grants. Lost points for not enabling residents to shape the action plan and work programme, despite evidence to the contrary. Lost points for being not having a clean air zone when we don't need one. We've then lost points because for not charging private vehicles to enter the clean air zone that we don't have. I could go on and on and on, Mr. Steele, but thank you for your question.
Right, we're moving on to item 3 now, declarations of interest. Can I remind members, if they have any registrable or non-registrable interests in matters appearing on the agenda and the nature of interest, they must verbally declare in respect of any items of business to be discussed at this meeting and the nature of such interests. You are also invited to disclose any dispensation for the requirement to declare any registrable and non-registrable interests that have been granted to you in respect of matters appearing on this agenda. Those members should also complete the card which has been circulated and return it to the receptacle located on the desk in the Democratic Services officers before you leave. Thank you. Councillor Cox, Deborah Cox.
Hi, I have a disclosable pecuniary interest in item 9. I will be leaving the meeting.
Councillor Steve Cox.
Yes, it's the same interest, Chair, and I've filled the card in and I'll be leaving the meeting at the time what items discussed. Thank you.
Okay, we're moving on to item 4, minutes of the previous meeting. The next item is minutes of the Council on the 21st of September. Can I ask the Council to confirm those minutes, please? Item 6, motions. 3 valid motions have been received as detailed in the agenda. Please note, details of any legal and financial implications of each of the motions has been circulated to all members prior to this meeting. Motion 1, signed by Councillors Kath Davis, Michelle Fox and Gary Madden. Can I invite Councillor Davis to move the motion?
Thank you, Chair. Although the number of deaths through smoking has fallen, it is still the leading cause of preventable illnesses. It is also widely acknowledged that vaping has been twice as successful as other nicotine replacement methods in helping people quit smoking. I'm not arguing the point that vaping is safer than smoking. I know that North Tyneside runs a highly successful stop smoking programme offering free support to quit. Alternatives are offered and vape products are used extensively to stop smoking habits. Action on Smoking and Health, ASH, have issued guidance to schools and support staff to develop policies on vaping. North Tyneside has been noted in their report as welcoming the support and have circulated this guidance to all our schools. However, vaping continues to grow in popularity. Now we have 4.3 million adults using vapes, or 8.3% of the population. But worryingly, the 18 to 24 age group of the population has gone from the lowest group to the highest in recent years. There has been a sevenfold increase in the use of disposable vapes. Action on Smoking and Health reports that 11 to 17-year-olds who've tried vaping jumped from 13.9% in 2020 to 30.5% this year. At present, it's too early to identify the health problems associated with using vapes. We do know, however, that vapes are addictive and they are used more frequently than cigarettes. Dentists are reporting side effects such as bad breath, ulcers, soreness of the mouth, and dryness of the mouth from vape users. The cheaper and flavoured vapes are more attractive to younger people. Baxter College gathered vapes from students in a secondary school in Kidderminster and found high amounts of lead, nickel and chromium in the vapes they were using. High exposure in children can affect the central nervous system and brain development. As regards the environment, 5 million single-use vapes are being thrown away in the UK every week. A fourfold increase in 2022, researchers found. This amounts to 8 vapes being discarded with lithium in the products, enough to create 5,000 electric car batteries a year. YouGov's survey found that 33% of 16 to 18-year-olds who vaped threw their e-cigarettes in the bin. These should never be thrown away. You should never throw away a disposable vape in your general waste. Any vapes in landfill can leach battery acid, nicotine and chemicals from the plastic into the environment, plus the lithium batteries pose a fire risk. When single-use or rechargeable vapes are binned or incorrectly disposed of, they can get crushed or damaged in bin lorries and recycling centre and start fires. This all means that too often local authorities are being burdened with the major operational and financial headaches associated with what is now the fastest growing and most dangerous waste stream in UK, single-use vapes. France, Scotland and Ireland have either banned or are looking to ban disposable cigarettes, and Germany has banned flavoured heated tobacco products. The Welsh Government has called on the government to prohibit single-use vapes. While we welcome the new bill on smoking and vapes, North Tyneside should be proactive in adopting the measures described in this motion, so we can better inform our residents, and especially children and young people, to the negative effects of vaping, as well as reducing potential costs to the authority in the future due to increased levels of disposing of single-use vapes. I ask the Chamber to support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Do you have a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second the motion and reserve the right to speak, please.
I'll now invite members to speak on the motion.
Could I propose an amendment to the motion, please, Chair?
Do you have a seconder? And a seconder, right. Okay.
Sorry, just making sure we've got a copy of it. Will come on, yeah. Thank you. I'll give members a minute or two to read the amendment. That's all right.
Chair, can we get a paper copy of the amendment, please?
Right. Gary Madden. Oh, sorry, Peter Early. So she now speaks on the amendment.
Okay, has everyone had an opportunity to read the amendment? Sorry. Sorry, I will speak to the amendment. That's right. Whilst I am in principle very supportive of the original motion, I have moved the amendment to reflect the fact that proposed actions will require additional government resources to implement effectively. In addition to the measures outlined in the motion, the government command paper published recently, October 23, Stopping the Start, a Smoke-Free Generation, contains key measures that, if implemented, will also require significant government resources to local authorities to implement. The health and well-being of our residents, including our young people, is indeed of paramount importance to North Tyneside Council and is central to everything we do as a local authority, as evidenced in our North Tyneside plan and in the North Tyneside Equally Well strategy, which is all about tackling the wider determinants of health inequalities and the implementation plans associated. We acknowledge that smoking remains a key driver of health inequalities in North Tyneside. It's the single largest cause of preventable deaths. No other consumer product kills up to 2/3 of its regular users. Vaping products remain the most common choice of aid to help people stop smoking. And vapes are substantially less harmful than smoking because they don't contain tobacco, though I do acknowledge research is in the early stages, but that is all the evidence to date. There is a strong, clear national message from the Chief Medical Officer and also regionally from the Association of Directors of Public Health North East. If you smoke, vaping is much safer. If you don't smoke, don't vape. There is a great deal of work already happening nationally, regionally, locally to make smoking history and tackle youth vaping. Expert local support is offered through the council funded stop smoking services. I would also like to say, despite year-on-year real-time reductions in the ring-fenced public health grant and the challenges posed to our budgets by the current context, the aftermath of COVID-19 and the current cost of living crisis, North Tyneside Council has continued to invest in a wide range of work around this issue. This includes the North Tyneside Tobacco Alliance, which is bringing together partners from across a range of different organisations and disciplines and has comprehensive plans to address tobacco control in the borough. The Alliance reports directly to the North Tyneside Health and Wellbeing Board and ensures that the best available international and local evidence is shared with all key local stakeholders and underpins local tobacco control efforts. Smoking cessation support and tobacco control programmes, including joint funding for Fresh North East and the local stop smoking services delivered through 27 community pharmacies who provide expert stop smoking support, including access to vapes. Stop smoking services have supported over 1,000 smokers to quit over the last 2 years. Tackling youth vaping, it is currently illegal to sell nicotine vaping products to anyone under 18. North Tyneside trading standards continue to successfully enforce this and act accordingly when retailers breach the law. The Association of Directors of Public Health North East issued a position statement on vaping and young people earlier this year. Vaping is not for children. Whilst it can help adults to quit smoking, it isn't risk-free. Those who don't smoke should not vape. So there are very clear messages around vaping. The North East Association of Directors of Public Health North East, Action on Smoking and Health, ASH, and Fresh North East, the Regional Tobacco Office, have created a range of materials which Councillor Davis did refer to. It includes posters for displays in schools, electronic leaflets designed for parents and carers with information on smoking and vaping, short animated films which can be used in lessons, form times and assemblies to start discussions, PowerPoint slides ready for use by teachers in the classroom alongside animated films to guide discussions. Thank you, Chair. More detailed slide sets for teachers. So there's a whole range of resources that we are currently using in schools and with our young people. There is a wealth of international evidence already available that will continue to expand, which the North Tyneside Health and Wellbeing Board regularly reviews and disseminates. Whilst the authority has worked to promote and expand disposal routes for residents, We will continue to lobby the industry to meet the full environmental costs of collecting and recycling vapes. The authority will continue to support the work of the Health and Wellbeing Board, which is chaired by myself as Cabinet Lead, to create a smoke-free generation with its coordinated tobacco control programme. Additional measures require additional resources, and that's the basis of this amendment. Thank you, Chair.
I'll now invite members to speak on the amendment.
Chair, can we just get some clarification? The written amendment doesn't include points B, C and D. Are they proposed to be removed, or is that just a printing error?
Printing error, apologies. Apologies for that.
And the last paragraph after the point, the last.
Yeah, just
So
a
the rest-
formatting
the rest
error.
is all in.
The bits that amended that are on the screen are the bits that amended. We also amended. Yeah, yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Still there. Apologies for that.
Councillor Hurley.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to speak to second the amendment. Whilst I'm in broad agreement with the aims of the original motion, I do think this amendment is required given the impetus for the action on vaping is driven by the government's forthcoming tobacco and vapes bill, which is likely to contain measures in relation to regulating vaping, such as restricting the flavours and descriptions of vapes so that they're no longer to be able to target at children, regulating point-of-sale displays in retail outlets so that they're kept out of sight of children, considering the restriction of the sale of disposable vapes, regulating vape packaging and product production, ensuring that neither the device nor its packaging is targeted at children, and introducing new powers for local authorities to issue on-the-spot fines, fixed penalty notices to enforce age of sale legislation of tobacco products and vapes. I'm aware that the government has announced £30 million to support agencies such as Local Trading Standards, HMRC and Border Force to take actions to stop underage sales and to tackle the import of illicit tobacco and vaping products at the border. I am, however, concerned that much of the work to implement and enforce the new legislation in relation to vapes will fall to local authorities, particularly trading standards departments and public health bodies, and that the money pledged to date will be insufficient to resource the extra responsibilities which will fall on councils such as North Tyneside. I think we all want to see the sale and use of vapes properly regulated, particularly in relation to their growing use by children. It cannot be that the government can simply impose these new obligations on councils without providing them with the necessary resources to carry out the work which will be needed in terms of education, research and enforcement. Therefore, I believe it's proper that this council should press the government to provide local authorities with adequate funding to implement and enforce the new legislation. Thank you.
Do any members wish to speak on the amendment? Councillor Bartle.
Thank you. I think this amendment is just the latest in a long line of what's becoming a depressing trend of good motions coming to council with good ideas and the party opposite either watering them down, blaming the government, kicking the can down the road, or generally obfuscating their own responsibilities. This is a good motion. It has no financial implications, as is made clear by the paperwork. There is no necessity to ask the government for funding because there is no financial implications. And all we're doing is delaying the implementation of what I think we all would agree is an important motion for the young people in our borough. What I would also say is, what happens if the government then say there is no additional funding? Are we just going to not do this? So for the sake of this amendment, we're perhaps going to put our young people at risk so the party opposite can play politics. I think it's a shameful amendment and we will not be voting for it.
Thank you, Chair. Nice part, Councillor Bartoli, not to really understand the financial implications of the motion. It quite clearly states that if the motion has any additional expenses, that will not be met from existing budgets. So there will be potentially more money to be spent. And, you know, Councillor Bartoli and the opposition never want to take the tough financial decisions that this council takes. They want to spend without being financially responsible. And we on this side will always be financially responsible. We know the cabinet, the budget going to cabinet next week is another tough budget, because another year the Conservative government have done absolutely nothing to tackle local government finances. Another year the Conservative government are forcing councils to put council tax up, and another year they haven't done a fair funding review, they haven't done a business rates review, and they've done nothing to look at funding for local government, Chair. It's quite clear from the financial implications that this would result from additional spending if we were to do stuff outside of what we're already doing. We will obviously continue to always have the public health programmes that Councillor Clark talked through in her proposal of the motion. To suggest we're going to do nothing is just complete hyperbole from Councillor Bartoli, but it's what we've come to expect in this chamber, Chair. So can I move to the vote, Chair? Can I propose a name vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. I didn't really want this motion to be very controversial. I just thought it was going to be, accepted. I can understand the Labour groups saying that we need additional funding, and I would hope that if that was needed, that we do apply for that, and also that in the meantime we do start to work on some of the measures that are in the motion, because I think it is really important. And like Councillor Bartoli referred to, the initial response we have for the council is that there would be no financial implications, but I can understand that might happen. So we will. I was really actually talking about the single-use vapes mostly, and I know the vapes are, a good alternative to smoking. But it's really single-use vapes that are really worrying. I mean, I see some young people with literally bags full of single-use vapes with all different flavours and things like that. And that's the kind of thing, and it's really that we want to educate young people to stop. And also the disposal of these as well, because it will mount up to a cost for the council in the end, because, we will end up with they can't go to landfill or anything like that, and it could be, the serious implications in the future. But we've agreed we will support the amendment, because obviously if we need additional funding, but I would, on the precept that, whatever measures can take place now will be implemented. Thank you.
There's been a request for a name vote, so do we have a seconder? Seconded. Right, we are now going to use the electronic vote. So it is plus for, minus for against, and 0 for abstentions.
I'm now going to open the vote. Can members please cast their votes? Has everybody satisfied that they've cast their vote? I'll now close the vote.
For 46, abstentions 0, against 8. The motion is carried. The amendment is carried, and now becomes a substantial motion. Does anybody want to debate on the substantial motion? Right, Councillor Carl Johnson.
Just to allay potentially Councillor Davis' fears, yes, we'll always continue to work on the things that we can do within existing budgets now. It is a hugely important issue to Council, and we have already done a lot of work on it, and we'll continue to do a lot more work on it. And we will do what we can from existing budgets now. But for some of the bigger ticket items, we will need funding from the government. I know you understand that, but just to confirm that, Chair.
Does anyone else wish to speak on this substantive motion? Okay, Councillor Clark, you have the right to reply.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to echo what Councillor Johnson said, really, and yes, Councillor Davis, we will absolutely continue to build on the excellent work that is already happening in the borough on the existing resources. I don't know where Councillor Bartoli thinks we're going to magic additional resources from, given that our ring-fence public health grant has had a significant decrease over the past 10 years in real terms, and that's not to mention the overall budget of the council being slashed by this government. Thank you.
Okay, we're now going to vote on the substantive motion. Those in favour, raise your hand. Is that unanimous?
It's unanimous, Chair.
That's unanimous, thank you. We're now going to motion 2, signed by Councillors McAlpine, Chris Johnson and Councillor Bartoli. Can I invite Councillor McAlpine to move the motion, please?
Thank you, Chair. As the festive season approaches, this group is putting forward a motion offering wholehearted support to the bedrock of our local economy. Small businesses are under intense pressure this year as the war in Ukraine continues to impact on their own costs, as well as the cost of living for residents. It's right that as a council, we encourage shopping locally, and our businesses already benefit from the Shop North Tyneside scheme and several initiatives derived from the government's Shared Prosperity Fund. October's Restaurant Week itself, a proposal by the Conservative group, was a runaway success. Money spent on our small businesses is money reinvested in our local economy. Footfall in our towns engenders a vibrance over the festive period and helps attract investment in the long term. Yesterday's autumn statement saw the introduction of 110 growth measures, innovative steps which have been welcomed by the CBI and other business groups. It's in this spirit that we're asking for a smart local intervention in the form of 2 hours of free parking for shoppers and visitors. The Federation of Small Businesses has already made an open recommendation on this measure to local authorities. We believe this motion affirms the Council's commitment to our small businesses, and I hope all members will be able to support it.
Councillor Chris Johnson, do you wish to second this motion?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and reserve the right to speak.
I'll now invite members to speak on the motion. Councillor Hannah Johnson.
Hi, thanks, Chair. I'd like to propose an amendment to the motion, please. It should have been sent through.
Okay. Can we see the amendment?
Can we please have a paper copy of the amendment?
Could we get a paper copy around, please?
Second amendment, Chair, would reserve the right to speak.
I'll give members a couple of minutes.
To speak.
Thanks, Chair. Essentially, we're proposing this amendment because you're behind on this one. We already have a very well-established free parking scheme over the winter months, and particularly in lead with Christmas during December, where we have free on-street parking, free parking on Saturdays and Sundays throughout December in our town centres, so in North Shields, Wallsend, Whitley Bay, and then also Front Street and Tynemouth. So I'm really pleased that we are also going to be having that this year. Experience shows that the blanket suspension of parking charges can actually slow turnover and not make people stay for as long as maybe they do if they just have free parking at a weekend, and it also moves the traffic into residential areas, causing problems there as well. We obviously don't want that to happen, because we want our town centres to flourish, and we want the people there who live there to not be inconvenienced by the additional parking. We are absolutely wanting to work with our small businesses, which is why we've had this scheme established for a number of years now. You know, it's a very well-known scheme with residents. I think they're pretty aware of it happening. It's probably happened it's happened for a good few years. So we want to continue that and to make sure that our small businesses have got that free parking again on weekends throughout December.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Carl Johnson, you wish to speak now, or shall I?
Yes, please, Chair. It's also the feasibility of the scheme as well. In order to enforce on a 2-hour parking window, we need to introduce a traffic regulation order. In order to introduce a traffic regulation order, we need to consult on that. December would be over with by the time we've had the chance to consult on that, and therefore we wouldn't be able to enforce on the 2-hour window. So people could turn up, leave their cars there all day, and actually slow trade the businesses if we didn't have that order in place and we couldn't enforce on that. So it would be a huge risk to do that, because anyone could turn up with their car, leave it there. Our wardens might well see that's been the same car there all day, but because it would have to be a blanket suspension because there's no traffic regulation order in place, we would therefore not have the ability to find that car, and it would not encourage it to move on. It would encourage the prime parking spaces outside the business to be taken up by cars that might not be moving on when they need a high turnover in those places for their businesses to thrive. So in theory, the blanket parking suspension might well be a good idea. It might be something we need to might explore for next year, but it's not really feasible for this December at all, and it might actually lead to business being harmed as opposed to the good that I'm sure the Conservative intended from the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Do we have anyone wish to speak? Councillor Bones.
Thank you, Chair. I think once again, to echo what Councillor Bartoli said on motion number 1, or the amendment to motion number 1, the Cabinet seemed to have found a convenient excuse not to support local businesses this Christmas. This motion was a perfect opportunity for the Council to go further in terms of what the Council can actually do to make a difference on the ground, and instead they are opting not to do it. The legal implications within the Council paperwork for this evening do not back up what Councillor Johnson is saying. He has found a convenient excuse to not offer free parking throughout December to our businesses, which we know our businesses would support and do support, and instead is sitting there saying that they are supporting small businesses by offering the same that they offer every single Christmas. This was an opportunity for this council to support our businesses at a time where they most need it, and instead the cabinet opposite have said that actually our businesses don't need more support, they can get what they're given, and that's not something that we will be supporting on this side of the chamber.
Point of clarification, Chair, on the legal implications, there's probably a question for the legal officer. Again, Councillor Bones doesn't understand how traffic regulation orders work, because what the legal implications say was that the legal process would need to be followed. That legal process would be a traffic regulation order, and we could not implement one in that time. That's just to clarify that from the legal officer point of view, Chair.
Chair, in my legal implications statement, I do make reference to the need to follow the appropriate legal process to vary any existing traffic on-street or off-street parking orders, and that could involve making temporary road traffic variation orders, which could take time because they would be subject to consultation.
Councillor Thirlby.
Thank you, Chair. My issue with this motion and my support for this amendment is pretty simple. The motion blames the Ukraine war exclusively for the cost of living crisis. And I think most councillors think that using the Ukraine war as a shield, essentially, for their economic mismanagement is just downright disgusting. And I think if they had any shame, they would withdraw this motion just on that point simply.
Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chairman. We were happy to support the motion as originally drawn, and I'm very disappointed to see the amendments that are proposed. During the administration of Mayor Arkley, when I was Cabinet Member for Finance, we did have a similar system of additional free parking to assist our businesses during the festive season. And I'd hope that that would be introduced again. The comment that's been made in the advice about the loss of revenue, I think is rather a red herring, because it's often known that if people are encouraged to come to a town and they see the benefits of the towns within the borough, they then return more often in the future, and in fact more income is then generated. It's very similar to the sort of Laffer curve with regard to low taxation. So I'm very disappointed to see the amendments, which mean unfortunately we cannot support the amendment at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really disappointed that the Labour Group intends to, or has amended this motion, especially in the light of the raft of measures introduced yesterday by the Chancellor to support local businesses. But, Chair, disappointed I may be, but I'm not surprised. Let me explain why. Over the last 3 years, 90% of motions that have been raised by the Conservative group and have been implemented have related to local issues. Issues raised by residents, issues that directly impact them. Now, these are like things like match funding for the repair and maintenance of roads and pavements, a road safety strategy, we've just heard that, okay, updating of tree management, use of drones to tackle antisocial behaviour, barriers and staffing at targeted metro stations, environmental wardens, bins, QR codes, reintroduction of Restaurant Week, programme to ensure regular maintenance of war memorials, refurbishment of St Mary's Lighthouse. All of these were actually brought forward by a Conservative group, local issues, and fortunately most of them have been implemented. I felt today the same thing would happen again, that what would happen basically is there'll be an amendment to our motion by the Labour group, okay, a tactic which is, I'm afraid, very prevalent over the last 2 to 3 years, in order actually to maintain or to claim the motion as their own. This is what they tend to do, have done in the past. They do this when they recognise that the motion's important. They actually amend it, and then, again, as I say, they claim it as their own, and they'll get the headline, they hope. Okay. I'm disappointed with this. Yes, you know, it's typical. Am I surprised? No, I'm not. Thank you.
I'm disappointed that the motion is proposed to be amended in this way. What was proposed was a simple and effective measure that I know would have been welcomed by local businesses and shoppers.
Chair, can I request a name vote on this amendment, please?
Okay, do you have a seconder? This is an electronic vote. Those in favour of the amendment, it's a plus. Those against the amendment, it's a minus. And those abstentions, the 0. Can we vote?
Yes, the vote is open, members, if you can just vote. If every member is satisfied that they have voted, I will close the vote. Councillor, is your machine not working? Pardon? It's Councillor Spout.
The right number of all.
Is that the right number?
42, 43. Does he mean to be?
Surely the vote's closed.
It's an issue of Councillor Spout's
The vote's not
voting.
closed. I don't know. Okay, right.
Is the vote closed? Can you rerun it, please? Right, can members vote again, please? Has every member voted? I'm now going to close the vote. Okay. Those in favour of the vote, 43. Those against the vote, 8. Abstentions, 2. The vote's carried. The amendment's carried. We'll now go on to the substantial motion. So we're going straight to the debate.
Move the vote, Chair.
I had, we put forward an amendment as well.
You've got an amendment?
Yeah, it's on the screen. You actually scroll past it.
Councillor Davis, are you moving an amendment? Is that seconded? Yep.
Okay, Councillor Davis, if you'd like to speak on your amendment, can you inform us where's the amendment?
I had set the amendment in, did you?
Let's try and bring it up.
Remind members that the amendment that we received now was an amendment to the original motion, which is now been surpassed by the substantive motion. So this amendment will go onto the substantive motion. If you get that, you understand that. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. I have to agree with the Labour Party that I'm not going to support that the rising cost of living was caused by the war in Ukraine. We have seen obscene profits by the energy companies and the banks, and generally the government's incompetence over the last 13 years to really, they've cut benefits, they've cut standards of living for everybody. There's been a rise in inflation. There's also been the mismanagement of the pandemic and cuts to local authorities funding. You know, we're trying to look at like what we're going to get raised from car parking charges when that shouldn't be happening, because we should have enough funding to make sure that businesses and things can be supported. The other point is that, well, particularly North Shields, I've asked small businesses in North Shields about the car parking, and there is an impact for them. I've spoken to a resident who says they'd rather go to the post office in Tynemouth because they can actually park there for free to go and see, and then rather to go to the North Shields one. And also the Beacon Centre car park, if anyone's been in there, it's the most dismal place. Women particularly, it's very poorly lit, it's horrible. And it's a private car park. It's not run by the council. But I'm sure I'm sure they would like to have it be used more frequently if there was something that the council could agree with the Beacon Centre to make that some parking there. There isn't a lot of parking in North Shields, and also there's disabled drivers, and others disabled drivers parking next to the centre But the other parking happens to be the one with you have to use the phone app, which often elderly people don't do that. And you've got other parkings 2p a minute. Whereas in some of the other town centres, you've got the parking more central. And I just think that, we need to be looking, and I do agree in principle with the Conservative motion about the 2-hour free parking, because I do think people are usually generally respectful of that. I don't think they're trying to abuse it in any way. And I do think it would help encourage more visitors to the small businesses. That's basically it. I think we need to be supporting our town centres as much as we can, and I think it would be good just to investigate what the costs are and actually speak to people about, in these town centres about the usage of the car parking. Thank you.
Now I'm going to invite members to speak on this amendment. So, Councillor Carl Johnson.
Just to clarify, Chair, on the amendment, in the amendment we've been shared, it has the original block from the Conservative group in that amendment. That now doesn't exist because the substantive motion, which is amending, includes our new block. So just to confirm for our members what I'm about to say. Chair, while we on this side absolutely do not think that the existing cost of parking discriminate against users in North Shields and whether there could be better provision for disabled drivers, we're always happy to look at that and show that we will be accepting the amendment. I've got no doubt that when we go back and look at that, it will show no, it doesn't discriminate against those people. But why not look at it? And I couldn't agree more with the obscene profits made by the energy companies and the Conservative government's incompetence as well, Chair. So we will be accepting the amendment, providing that it is the amendment to the established motion, which changed to the weekend parking only, Chair.
Does anybody else wish to speak on the amendment? Councillor. Councillor Gary Bell.
I'll just get my assistant to help us out. Thanks, Chair. I'd like to thank Kath for bringing this motion because from first-hand experience of trying to run a business in North Shields on Nile Street, the 2 pence a minute charge, when you go around the corner to where the Terminus Club is 50 pence an hour, drives you wild. And it's a standardised charge of a good garage in the future. It would be helpful to North Shields. And when you go to North Shields, I go there quite a bit, and it's not in the best of health, North Shields. And I think anything we can do for local businesses would be helpful. And I'm sure that the Cabinet can look at this in the future and come forward maybe some proposals to help North Shields. I know it's free after 6 o'clock. But any help we can get for businesses will be appreciated.
Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Hannah Johnson, you have the... Oh, sorry, excuse me. Councillor Bartoli.
Thank you. How we've ended up talking about obscene profits of energy companies, government incompetence and the war in Ukraine, I think is beyond me. This was a non-political motion to start with. In fact, we praised what the council had done to support small businesses. It was a positive step. The independents, I have no idea what their position is because they seem to be supporting 2 hours of free parking but voting against the actual point that makes that. It's really disappointing from this side of the chamber. This was a non-political motion. Whilst I accept Councillor Johnson's comments that it may have been difficult to do, I don't see it as being impossible. And if that was the reason, the sole reason, I think we would have supported that. But the fact that this has become so political, I think this is becoming an embarrassment within the chamber. And I think as councillors, we need to take a long, hard look at ourselves and ask, are we really doing what's best for our residents? Because I would suggest none of these amendments that have been put forward have really put our residents first. They put the Labour Party first and they put party politics first, which is not what any of the residents want to see.
Thank you, and thank you for your amendment as well, Councillor Davis. I think we just move to the vote, to be honest.
Okay, we are now voting on the amendment. Those in favour of the amendment, please raise your hands. Those against the amendment? Any abstentions? No abstentions. The amendment is carried. Now we go back to the substantive motion after the amendments. So
there's a debate on the new substantive motion.
Yeah, so there's a debate on the new substantive motion. So anybody wish to speak? Councillor Bones.
Thank you, Chair. I wish to move a further amendment, if possible. I have it in writing, but I don't know if it's easier for me to read or...
If you've insisted that everybody gets a copy, so I think everybody else needs a copy here for this one.
Thank you.
Chair, can I ask a legal question on the handling of the business tonight? I'm just noticing of the Constitution states that the electronic voting system can be used for any vote. I'm just wondering if that would potentially speed matters up when doing the non-named votes.
It's at the Chair's discretion, but my understanding was the amendment that was made at the annual council meeting related to recorded votes.
I'll read that sentence again, and I think that's absolutely right.
Can members look at the screen? We have updated the motion to the substantive motion to where we are now before the new amendment. We think, we believe, we hope. Okay. Councillor Bones, when the amendment comes in, do you have a seconder, just to save some time? Councillor Johnson. John Johnson. Yeah, I think we've all read the amendment. Councillor Bones, would you like to speak on this?
Thank you, Chair. This amendment seeks to return to the original point in hand without being distracted by national politics. Councillor Johnson, in his initial response to the motion, said that the reason, while Cabinet agreed with it in principle, the reason that the Cabinet couldn't introduce it was that there wasn't time this year. This motion doesn't seek to change any of the amendments that have already been put in place, but instead adds to the end that the Mayor introduced the 2 hours of free parking from next year, which Councillor Johnson would be pleased to hear would remove the issue of time. So I think this amendment hopefully will deliver a boost to our small businesses, albeit not this year. And I hope that, given that the Independents have indicated that they're supportive of the idea of free parking in December, and Councillor Johnson said that Cabinet was supportive but there wasn't time, hopefully this is an amendment that we can all get behind. Thank you.
Do you wish to speak?
No, Chair, I'll second though.
Councillor Carl Johnson.
Always good if Councillor Bones misconstrue my words as he does there. What I said was in principle be supportive. I didn't really give time as the only reason behind it. Chair, we've had no legal or financial implications arising from this motion, so we'd be voting against this amendment, Chair. What I just recommended the Conservative group is they put it in their part of their budget proposals for next year. It has financial implications affected. You know the Council is facing unprecedented cuts from your Conservative government next year, so I'd recommend you put it in your budget proposals, and we'll consider this in our budget proposals next year, which we'll consider the February meeting, Chair.
Point of clarification, Chair. The legal and financial implications to this amendment should be no different to the legal and financial implications in the original motion.
Councillor Davis, as your amendment was passed, you have the right reply at this point to this amendment.
While I do agree with the free two-hour parking, it's going to be very difficult for us to agree to an amendment that's going to be next year when we don't know what the financial implications are for the council. And you know, what the budgets are going to be, because we're getting year-on-year cuts. And I would like that to be assessed. I mean, I would like that to come forward as something that we can look at then. But I think we can't look that far ahead. I don't even know if we'll all be sitting here this time next year. And I wouldn't want to agree on something that we can't implement, you know. But I would like to see the 2-hour parking eventually, because I do think it's a really good initiative, and I knew Labour Group initiated it, and it is good over the Christmas period. But again, I think it's a bit of an ask to try and determine what's going to be happening next year.
Right, we're now voting on this amendment. So those in favour of this amendment, please raise your hands. No. Those against this amendment? Eight for, 45 against, and no abstentions.
So the amendment's not carried.
This amendment isn't carried, so now we go back to the absolute substantive motion.
Chair, can we move to the vote straight away, please?
Right, we're going for the vote straight away.
Chairman, could you just spin through the whole thing as it stands now, please? There's been so many ins and outs, so we can actually see the whole motion again now.
People, a couple of minutes to read it.
Can I ask for a name vote on it, Chair, to make it quicker as well, please?
Need a seconder for the name vote? Joe Kerwin. Okay, we're going to go to the vote now. And for the substantive motion, it's the plus, against, it's the minus, and abstentions, it's the 0.
I'll close the vote.
Those in favour of the substantive motion, 45. Those against the substantive motion, 8. Abstentions, 0. The substantive motion is carried. Okay, we're going on to motion 3, signed by councillors John Johnson, Ollie Scargill and Liam Bones. Can I invite Councillor John Johnson to move the motion?
Thank you, Chair. Let's hope this is going to be a little bit quicker. Dogs can brighten up the darkest of days just by looking at you. And science now tells us that owning a dog has huge benefits to mental and physical health. I know of a lot of dog owners here in the chamber, and a walk down our beautiful coast at the weekend shows us how many of our residents enjoy having a dog as a member of their family, with the vast majority of these being well trained and cared for. I've spent several years working and volunteering at a dog rescue charity. I experienced the very best and sadly the very worst of human nature. And those of you who know me will be used to me shoving my mobile phone in your face with pictures of my 5 rescue pugs. Sadly, 9,000 people a year are admitted to hospital with severe dog bites, costing our NHS £71 million. And the number is increasing with the large numbers of dogs purchased during the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, 1,000 of our postal workers have had their fingers bitten off in the last 5 years, and we've now reached the terrifying statistic that 16 people have lost their lives to attacks from dangerous dogs since the start of 2022. Many of these are children. Since becoming a councillor in May, I've been involved in 3 incidents where a dangerous dog has attacked other dogs and their owners. One of these incidents resulted in the victim's dog being severely mutilated for life. They incurred vet's bills of £5,000, and the owner was in hospital with bites when they became infected. Very often when dogs attack, residents are frightened to report the incident to the police for fear of repercussions. So the dangerous dog continues to live in the neighbourhood with children, families and other dog owners living in fear. Fellow councillors, we would be devastated if we ever had to face a fatal attack by a dangerous dog in our borough. And can we welcome the decision by central government to add the XL bully type to the list of dogs prohibited under the Dangerous Dog Act, meaning that from the 1st of February it will be illegal to breed, sell, advertise, exchange, gift, rehome or abandon an XL bully dog, and anyone wishing to keep their existing XL bully dog must apply for an exemption. Can we work with housing to establish any policy areas in relation to the council housing tenancies that could be tightened in relation to dangerous dogs? And lastly, on a wider level, can we consider possible further actions to promote animal welfare and responsible ownership, such as the dog behaviour contract that has been discussed in Liverpool between the council and Merseyside Police? I hope that we get cross-party support for this motion tonight.
Councillor Johnson, do you have a seconder?
Yeah, second, reserve the right. Thanks.
I will then invite members to speak. Councillor John Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to move an amendment.
Okay, thank you, Councillor John Harrison, for that.
But it's quite a simple amendment, Chair, and it's certainly within the spirit of the actual motion.
Councillor Harrison, would you like to speak on your amendment?
Thank you, Chair. I raise this in a non-political way, believe it or not. It certainly acknowledges it removes Conservative. It welcomes the government's decision to add this type of dog to the list of prohibited under the Dangerous Dog Act, and amending or removing to and amending as ask the Mayor to write to all members confirming we already have policies in place for council tenants with regard to animals and any part they play in that. And I raise that, Chair, specifically with that in mind.
Do you have a seconder?
Happy to second, reserve the right to speak.
Does anyone wish to speak on the amendment? Councillor Bartoli.
So I think in fairness to this amendment, at least it doesn't move away from the spirit of the motion. But what it has done is it has once again obfuscated the party opposite, who seem to forget they're actually in charge of the council and running things, from doing any work. Because all we'd asked is that just to look over their policies. We've seen these incidents nationally, so they are happening, and they could happen in this borough. So just to establish any policy areas that may be tightened up. But instead, what we've come back with is we're doing everything perfectly and we don't need to make any changes. Another disappointing amendment, not as bad as the last one, but I just would remind the party opposite, they're the ones in charge. It's not everything, it's not somebody else's job.
Councillor Carl Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Thankfully, residents certainly know we're in charge of the council, and that's why they keep voting us in year after year after year. I know there's no experience in the Conservative group, and the only two Conservative members that served in the Conservative administration now sit as independents, and therefore don't really know how the council works properly when you're in administration. But what's happened when this motion come in is the council officers look to see what policies we've got in place. And if we're actually, no, we've got them policies in place already. And that's what's happened in this situation. I know you wouldn't know that because none of you have ever been in power around the council, fortunately, for our residents. Chair, this is intended in the spirit of the motion, but also, I really don't like singling out council house tenants because that's what this motion does as well. And I want to really ensure that it should be the police that are enforcing on that. If we had to take action against council house tenants, what would they would be, we need to go to the court system. The Conservative government has ruined the court system. It would take months to get a court date to enforce on this. The police can enforce immediately on stuff like this, Chair, and it's right that the police are the people that are enforcing this. But I almost think this is a bit of a disgraceful attack on council house tenants from the Conservative Party officers by just singling them out and not talking about other tenants. If other people outside of council houses can own XR bullies and do, and certainly the incident in this borough, the only one that we've had in this borough, wasn't in a council house, Chair. It's right that the police should enforce on this. I do think this amendment fixes those issues, but sticks to the spirit of the motion and recognises that this potentially could be a dangerous dog, and sticks with the motion of why we want to enforce on this, but we have to make sure we do it in the right way, Chair.
Councillor Bones.
Thank you, Chair. I think once again, Councillor Johnston is completely ignoring the issue. The motion initially asked, it didn't suggest that the council didn't have policies. It said that could we work to tighten the policies. That was a specific request in a recent publication from the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities in relation to antisocial behaviour primarily caused by dogs. So this is not something that we've just made up on this side of the chamber. This is a specific ask from government to look at policy areas that can be tightened up. It's not saying that there aren't policy areas already, it was asking for them to be tightened up. And instead, the party opposite are saying, we already do enough, not our problem, let's sweep it under the mat. And once again, our residents will be no better off. After sitting here for nearly 2.5 hours, our residents will be no better off because of the decisions made in this chamber, because the party opposite refused to take any action whatsoever. We won't be supporting the amendment.
Councillor Samuel.
Yeah, just to add to what's been said. I mean, the problem we have with this motion is it appears to single out the problem in council tenants that have dangerous dogs, and that's what the problem is, and that is not the case. I personally, when I've been out delivering leaflets, I've been attacked by dogs twice, and I can assure you neither that happened in the council house area. It was both in a residential area which was privately owned, and that's the issue. The dangerous dogs occur everywhere. And why you have chosen this motion to single out council tenants, we just find somewhat unfair, let's put it that way. I'm going to say a word.
Point of clarification, Chair. The reason the motion singles out council housing tenancies is because that's something that the council has specific responsibility for, as per the publication from the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities. This isn't something we've chosen to do. That is specifically what the council can take action on. So this classist speech from Councillor Samuel, I think, is for the birds.
Councillor Bones. Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chairman. I think following on from what Councillor Bones has said, I don't think this motion is singling out council house tenants. It is surely in relation to council house tenancies that any local authority has power. The local authority does not have power with regard to private sector tenancies, and therefore it would be pointless to include that. Clearly there is a concern about having responsible dog owners right across the borough, and I think it's very disappointing to see this amendment.
Councillor John Johnson, you have the right reply.
Just to say, Chair, it's very disappointing. I brought this motion tonight in good faith after talking to a lot of residents, and I'm just really disappointed that obviously it's now being kicked into the long grass, essentially.
Right, we're going to the vote now. Need a seconder?
Members could please vote now. If members are content that they have voted, I'll close the vote. Close the vote, please.
In favour of the amendment, 45. Against the amendment, 8. No abstentions. The amendment has been carried. We now return back to the substantial motion. Councillor Carl Johnson.
Councillor Bartoli made the comment that no residents are better off in the back of this council tonight, and that's right. Residents are £1,900 a year worse off on the back of a Conservative government.
Councillor Harrison.
Yes, Chair. I'm a little bit despondent to the point, because by moving this amendment, it was actually trying to create the spirit of it, because I do think it's important that this type of breed of dog is added to the list of dangerous dogs, because of the number of attacks involved in that breed. And also agree by adding the dog to that list, what it does give is that responsible owners that responsibility to register their dog and carry out certain things that they need to do. It's muzzled at all times when it's in the public area and so forth. But also, in welcoming that decision by the government, I do consider that it should have probably focused a little bit more on not just banning these types of dogs, but also looking into those unscrupulous dealers and breeders of dogs, and at the same time also identifying the irresponsible owner and putting legislation in place to deal with that element of it. But moving on to the council element of it, my concern is about that. It's simple. I do think we do have policies in place regarding our tenancy agreement, right, to actually deal with this. We certainly do review them, and we will continue to review those, and we're due to continue that review quite soon. So therefore, I don't really think it's necessary for me to actually review that at the present moment, given the fact that dealing with the dangerous dogs is done under the Dangerous Dogs Act and the Animal Welfare Act, so this system's in place. Also, we as a council have actually put in place for all of our residents, and this is all of our residents, and I think it's back to the nub of what others have said, an antisocial behaviour policy. And that explains how we deal with such behaviour, and it set aside the key legislations. And that's for all. And remember, council tenants or residents of North Tyneside. So when I looked at the point of asking the mayor to take up look into the policy and relate to the council house tenants, and that was to ensure a more robust stance on ownership of the dogs, where they are found to play a part in it, and that's what the original motion was saying. I found that was not founded, as the statistics tell me different regarding, and remember I'm looking at tenancy here, statistics are telling me different in that, other than the odd dog barking and the dog fouling in the areas, we're not recording now, we haven't recently recorded any instances of dangerous dogs, and that's under the tenancy agreement. So, in my mind, if we agreed to what was proposed, we are probably saying to council tenants, you are different from other residents of North Tyneside, given the fact that I would argue that because of that tenancy agreement, which they assign, they are still subject to our antisocial behaviour and animal welfare acts, and also any legal implications, which we all do. So, if anything, there's more for them to actually agree to than there is in, say, other residents of North Tyneside. For assurance, we certainly will look at and do take this serious, and we do regularly review our policies, and certainly in our housing policies, and we will be certainly looking at that. And if incidents increase on that, then certainly we would review that policy in a very short period of time. But the statistics are telling me at the present moment there's no need for me to do that at the present time.
Now going to the vote on the substantive motion. Those in favour of the substantive motion, please raise their hands. I want a name vote. Have you got a seconder?
The name vote is open. If members could vote, please. If members are satisfied that they have voted, I'll close the vote now.
Those in favour of the substantive motion was carried by 45 votes. There were no, against and 8 abstentions. Motion's carried. We are now moving on to item 7, the appointment of Deputy Chair for the Caring Subcommittee. Can I invite nominations for the position of Deputy Chair for the Caring Subcommittee? Councillor Carl Johnson, you're moving it.
Nominate Gary Bell, Chair.
Do we have a seconder?
Chair, I'll be seconding Gary Bell.
Are there any other nominations? Those in favour, please raise. Great. Those against? Abstentions? Take everybody as abstentions. Okay, thank you. That motion was carried. That report was made. Right, here we go. Item 8, electrical vehicle charging. Can I ask Councillor Matt Wilson to move the report? And
thank you, Chair. I'm conscious of the time, so I'll just make a very, very brief introduction to this report before we vote on it. So a particularly important aspect of this working group was to consider the part that individual residents and households can play in helping to achieve a smooth transition to a lower carbon future. And so for those of us who are on the working group, it was very important to recognise the disadvantage currently being faced by thousands of residents who either have already switched to an electric vehicle or want to switch but do not have access to off-street parking, and so are paying perhaps 3, 4 or 5 times more to charge their vehicle at public charging points. Imagine if you had to pay 3, 4 or 5 times as much for your petrol just because you live in a terraced house. But as well as the justice angle to this, there's a pragmatic angle too. For every individual or household that we make it easier for them to charge at home, be that with an approved variety of cable protector or with an installed gully, for example, that's one less vehicle placing a demand on public infrastructure. And our group found that with the right policies in place, we can make home charging the #1 way to charge, reducing the overall infrastructure investment burden within the borough. This was a cross-party working group supported by a really great group of council officers. Thanks very much to all involved for their contributions. I believe that we've made an important, helpful and practical set of recommendations that will really make a difference and help us to accelerate our progress on this important issue in the years ahead. And so I trust that members from all parties will vote in favour.
Have a seconder?
Second, Chair.
Any questions on the report? And now, Councillor Bartoli.
Chair, there's questions about the motion, about the
report.
About the report. Sorry, I've got a comment, not a question. Apologies, Chair.
Okay, we'll go to comments now if nobody has any questions. Okay. Right, Councillor Bartoli.
Thank you. The reason we have this report in front of us today is a Conservative motion that was put to this council almost a year ago, which was about using a gully system or introducing a gully system and looking into that. That then, needless to say, was amended on the night and watered down, and I warned that evening that the danger here was we were going to get we wouldn't be able to see the wood for the trees, and this was going to get kicked further down the road. We're 10 months on from the original motion by the Conservatives, and whilst we have made some progress tonight, and I commend the report, one of the things that was highlighted at the very beginning, and I highlighted, is that we are behind other councils. And I'm an electric car driver, as is Councillor Wilson, and I know from my experiences in speaking to other electric car drivers, we do not have as good of facilities in North Tyneside as other areas of the country. And this was a great opportunity, I think, to make a start. And unfortunately, we've wasted another 10 months on another amendment and kicking the can down the road further. I hope this is the end to that, and I hope at this point we can actually start to make some positive steps forward.
Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to support the report, but I do think it highlights several problems with regard to electric vehicle charging, and I have particular concerns about the use of cable matting in our streets. I mean, we have an enormous amount of terraced housing within the borough, both in single occupancy and in flats, and many of our pavements are in an absolutely shocking state and difficult for both able-bodied pedestrians and those with wheelchairs, pushchairs, recovering from surgery, etc. And I think the use of the potential use of a lot of cable matting across our pavements is going to cause a lot of problems for a lot of residents. And I'm also concerned about the potential for antisocial behaviour with cable matting in existence. So I just wanted to flag those issues up. Thank you.
Else wish to speak on the report? Those in favour of the report? That's unanimous. Now moving on to item 9, council tax. Go on. Council tax on empty property premium. Can I ask Councillor Anthony McMullen to move this report?
Thank you. The purpose of this report is to present a request to Council for an amendment to the long-term empty property premium for council tax. Since April 2020, the authority has applied a long-term empty property premium on properties that have been empty for at least 2 years. When the government introduced the relevant legislation, it was aimed at encouraging owners to bring back into use or make properties available for sale or rent. Over time, we have seen a reduction in the number of empty, unfurnished domestic properties in the borough. This shows that this policy, along with other support the authority has in place to work with the empty property owners, has had a positive impact on the borough. On the 26th of October 2023, the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill received royal assent, and within this are 2 changes related to council tax. One of which enhances the previous legislation around long-term empty property premium, and the other around introducing a second homes premium, which will be considered at a future date as it relates to 25-26. The empty property premium can now be applied when the property has been empty and unfurnished for a continuous period of 1 year, instead of the current 2 years. The earlier time this can be introduced by local authorities is as of the 1st of April 2024. And in order to adopt this, in the authority's budget planning for next year, council approval is required. If approved at this meeting, the updated approach will be built into the Cabinet's report on the 22nd of January 2024 that will consider the council tax base for the next financial year. Based on recent data, there is estimated around 480 empty properties in North Tyneside that would attract a premium at some point in 2024 within this change of legislation. The majority of these are long-term empty properties or in Band A of council tax, which is often more in deprived areas of the borough, and if they're brought back into use, could be a useful additional source of affordable housing. The government carried out a consultation on this change around the circumstances where properties may be exempt from the premium, and we await guidance. To build on the foundations we have laid with introducing the long-term empty property premium from April 2020, I recommend the Council approve option 1 contained within section 1.6 of this report and agree to the changes laid out in the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act 2023 to allow the authority to apply council tax long-term empty property premium at 1 year rather than waiting until the property is empty for 2 years.
Do you have a seconder?
Second and reserve the right to speak, Chair.
Are there any questions? Councillor Bones?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor McMullen, in your speech, you referred to the second homes premium, which is still a year or so off. I just wonder if you could give us an indication on Cabinet's thinking on that, and when we can expect that to come to full council.
So yeah, whilst we're still waiting for the details of that to be fleshed out more, we're still pending on that, and they'll be brought to a future council meeting, but I don't have more details at this time.
January.
Councillor Johnson?
Responding to the question, Chair, will be coming in January.
Other questions? I now invite members to speak on this report. Councillor Johnson? Carl Johnson, do you want to speak? You want to? Councillor McIntyre.
Thank you, Chair. We are against additional taxation. Council tax is already high in North Tyneside, and whilst government is giving councils power to impose this premium, they don't have to, and it's not appropriate in North Tyneside. Owners of these empty properties already pay extra after 2 years, and they aren't using council services like bins, social care, etc.
Johnson.
Yeah, sorry, I did want to speak, but I do know. Chair, this is bringing back long-term empty properties back into use, and I understand, some of these people might be in financial hardship, but the council has a number of schemes in place to support residents if they are in financial hardship and can't bring those back into place. We've had some really successful schemes in the Wallsend area where there was really, really poor, empty private housing stock, which worked with the council. The council put the money up front, they get the money back in the rent, and then they hand property back to the owners when it's decent standard. So I don't see why anyone would possibly be against this, Chair. We don't want long-term empty properties. It's a great initiative the Conservative government brought in to try to increase the level. We don't want long-term empty properties. They should be used for people that desperately need affordable housing in this country.
Councillor Bones.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to agree with Councillor Johnson. It is an opportunity. Not something that happens very often, but it is an opportunity. We all have problems with empty properties in our own wards, and I'm sure that for the neighbours living around them, it is a real issue. It surprises me that councillors would be against bringing those properties back into use, and the government have given councils the levers. So this is one case where councils are using the levers given to them. So we're happy to support this.
Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chairman. We're not at all against bringing properties back into use, and indeed it's good that there are schemes available to encourage people to do so. But I don't think that it's necessary to impose additional council tax for that purpose.
Okay. Are we in agreement with this report? Right. Those against? 2 against. Okay. Item 10 has been withdrawn. Go straight to item 11, which is the Chair's announcements. Members may be aware that the 16 days of action against violence against women starts on the 25th of November. An article was included in the recent members' briefing about how members can get involved. One of the ways members can do this is wear a white ribbon, and I would like to inform members that there's a box of white ribbons on the table next to the door of the chamber for members to have to wear to support the campaign. A bit further, personally, since the last council meeting in September, I've been fairly busy. I've given out citizen certificates at 2 ceremonies to North Tyneside residents who have come from various parts of the world, all with different backgrounds, and who have all brought with them the much needed skills that we require in the UK. I was fortunate to be invited to the Salvation International Band concert in the Cultural Quarter on Howard Street in September. Also in September, I attended the Battle of Britain commemoration service at the War Memorial on the Links. That was the day the rains opened, the clouds opened and everything was just a bit wet. On Friday, the 6th of October, I attended the State of Area event at the Linskill Centre. On that same day, I give out medals and certificates to youngsters competing in the Hadrian School Swimming Gala. On the 21st of October, I attended the Trafalgar celebrations, the achievement of Vice Admiral Lord Collingwood. On the 26th of that month, I handed out certificates to the Adult Learner Awards here in the Chamber. I opened property appeals for the British Legions of Forest Hall, North Shields and Whitley Bay on the 27th of October. I attended the Whitley Bay Rotary Club centenary lunch on the 29th of October, and I give my thanks to the President, John Clarkson, and the members of the Rotary Club for that invitation. I was very pleased and privileged to attend the dedication of the Fields of Remembrance at Saltwell Park on the 4th of November. And it was with great sadness that I attended the funeral mass of Councillor Linda Rockley at St Cuthbert's on the 7th of November. On the 9th of November, I was pleased to attend the Freedom of the Borough presentation to Sting. And finally, I attended the post-1945 Remembrance Service at the White Hart Centre on the 11th of November. And on the 12th of November, I attended Remembrance Services at the War Memorials in North Shields, Whitley Bay and Backworth. Thank you. I'll now ask the Vice Mayor, the Deputy Mayor, if he wishes to say it.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the Mayor is very sad she can't be here tonight, particularly from what I'm about to say. She's asked me to wish Mark Longstaff well because this is his last council meeting with us. Mark started at North Tyneside Council 28 years ago in October 95, started in local government in 1984, so it's a really hell of a long service in local government. Mark's been at the sharp end of the spear for lots of things on us, lots of big issues over the last 10 years in particular. And it's done an absolutely fantastic job president of this council. I really want to thank Mark for that. From a very personal point of view, when I used to sit before I was a councillor in what was then described by someone else, loser's corner, I probably learned more from Mark than any other council officer because I used to bother him constantly with questions during the council meetings long before I was a councillor. So just really pay tribute for Mark and thank him for his many years service in North Tyneside Council. He's done a fantastic job and we're really sad to see him go. Thank you, Chair.
We're now moving on to item 13, questions by members of the council. Question 1, Councillor Wilson.
Happy to take it as read, Chair.
Councillor Clark, would you like to answer?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just trying to find my notes, if you bear with me a minute. Thank you. Apologies. Thank you for this question. Like you and most of us here, I to remember the white ribbon motion being passed. We should all take pride in the fact it received unanimous support in the Chamber, and our message was therefore clear about the level of seriousness with which we take this issue and the values we want to uphold here in North Tyneside. I'm pleased to report that significant progress has been made since the motion was passed. Following its application, the authority received formal accreditation from the White Ribbon Organisation in November 21, and therefore endorsement for the required 3-year plan we submitted. We have since established a growing network of ambassadors, those who have signed the White Ribbon Pledge, and their men, internal staff, directorate from all directorates across the authority, supporter organisations and partner organisations. We've embedded a group of champions, those who have committed to raise awareness, who are women, and again reflect those groups just referred to. We've ensured we have a strong communications plan. We participated in the annual international 16 Days of Action. As we've already heard tonight, it commences on White Ribbon Day, the 25th of November. And there's a whole range of actions in place, including the park run at the Rising Sun Country Park on the 25th of November at 9 a.m. And throughout the 16 days, the white ribbon flags will be flown at Quadrant in Killingworth, and the lighthouse will be illuminated orange. There is more information on the council website about ways people may want to get involved in that, and hopefully we'll support that. We're also engaged in developing the authority's overall work on ensuring dignity and respect in working for the council. We're now at the midway point of delivering our 3-year delivery plan, and the steering group chaired by our Director of Regeneration and Economic Development, John Sparks, is reviewing where we've got to and looking to shape the next steps going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Wilson, do you have a supplementary question?
No, I don't. Thank you to Councillor Clark for that update.
Thank you. Councillor Newman, do you wish this to be?
I'll take it as read, Chair.
It is read. Councillor Carl Johnson, do you wish to respond?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor Newman, much like you, I'm very disappointed that the honour, which this chamber has discussed many times over the years and has received cross-party support on. Councillor Gary Bell, when he was Veterans Champion, brought a number of motions on the nuclear test veterans. We've had representatives from the community in here many times as well. The way this was handled from the government, the way they organised it, doesn't really sit well with me, Chair. So I absolutely agree the nuclear veterans deserve a high recognition for their service. And we've spoken to the officer team, who made the necessary arrangements to hold a ceremony to celebrate these veterans that have been awarded their medals.
Councillor Newman, do you have a supplementary?
Just a very quick one. Due to the nature of these operations, we don't hold any data on eligible veterans, and the current policy is that any veteran who believe they're eligible would have to apply online. Can I ask that the council take an active role in advertising how veterans apply and encouraging all eligible veterans to apply for these medals?
Absolutely, Councillor Newman. We'll use all possible channels that we have to try and promote this as far and wide as we possibly can.
Question 3, Councillor Scargill, do you wish to ask the question or do you wish to take it?
I can ask it, that's fine. Thank you. Will the Mayor provide usage data for Rake Lane, the New York bypass and the roundabout from before and after the introduction of the cycle scheme? Thank you.
Councillor Graham, do you wish to respond?
Thank you, Chair. We aim to support people of all ages and abilities to take part in cycling as a healthy and sustainable way of getting to workplaces, shops, schools and other local destinations. In our cycling strategy, we set out how we will support everyday cycling. We measure numbers of cycle trips through electronic counters at locations throughout the borough, and a summary of this is reported to Cabinet each year as part of the North Tyneside Transport Strategy Annual Report. This showed that cycling in the borough was 18.6% higher than the authority's target for 2022. Pre-pandemic data is not available for Rake Lane and the New York bypass. We have recently installed fixed cycle counters on the route to enable us to monitor cycling growth in this corridor. These fixed counters were installed in April 2023, one just east of the New York bypass to Billy Mill Lane roundabout works, and the other to the west of the Rake Lane Preston North Road roundabout. Data from the cycle counters to date indicates that the current average daily number of cyclists using this route is 154. However, it should be noted that the roadworks associated with the new housing development are currently ongoing on this site. The authority has also been successful in securing £11 million of Conservative government and external funding to deliver the seafront sustainable route, which will encourage families and visitors to cycle to and along the North Tyneside coast, boosting visitors' numbers and helping the local economy. I look forward to seeing many more people taking part in cycling, which will help support people's health, better local air quality, and our carbon net zero goals. Thank you.
Councillor Scargill, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, thank you. I don't think that was an answer to the question. So, given that the data isn't going to be released, the reality is, if this had been put to a vote, like we asked for last year, the scheme would never have gone ahead. People would have voted overwhelmingly against its implementation. It's just another example of an out-of-touch Labour Council splashing our money about like nothing else on big vanity projects whilst getting the basics all wrong.
Have you got a question?
Is it There's no question. Do I have a minute? Because I'm taking my minute to ask the question.
It has to be a question.
So, I'm asking a question, thank you. Is it the case the Mayor is hiding the data because it shows her beloved cycle scheme hasn't increased the number of cyclists around New York, or how safe they feel, is a huge waste of money and has caused chaos and disruption like never before?
Is that a question?
I think I've just told you that this data is published, and I've just given you the daily cycling rates of 154 on the counters, and it's published every year in the Cabinet report. Have you not been listening to what I've said, Councillor Scargill? There is nothing hidden. It is all open and transparent. This is government money, your government, who gave us the money that we bid for.
Councillor Bartoli, you speak through the chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bartoli, for your interruption, as usual. This is the Conservative government giving us this money to provide cycling infrastructure to allow the borough to become a greener and better net zero borough. Thank you.
Okay. Item 14, decision of the Standards Subcommittee. This report is attached for Council to note. Members are advised that it would be not appropriate for the Council to discuss the details of this matter, as the hearing is now complete and the matter has been determined by the Standards Committee. Okay. Right, that's the end of business for this meeting. I would like to all thank you for your attendance. Oh yes, Merry Christmas to everyone. This is the last meeting. As long as there's no amendment to the Christmas.